Winter 1944 descended upon the Eastern Front like an iron curtain of frost and death. German tank crews still believed in the invincibility of their steel monsters. Their Tigers and Panthers were the embodiment of Germanic engineering supremacy. Thick armor measuring up to 100 millimeters on frontal plates, the devastating 88mm KWK-36 gun that could shatter enemy tanks at distances exceeding 2,000 meters, and Carl Zeiss optics that transformed distant battlefield silhouettes into precision targets. Soviet T-34 and KV-1 tanks could only dream of penetrating these armored fortresses from the front. They had to risk everything, dancing with death as they maneuvered desperately to strike at vulnerable side or rear armor, always knowing that one well-aimed German shell would turn their tank into a burning coffin. Wehrmacht tankers openly mocked Red Army attempts to create a worthy response, but they did not know that in design bureaus in Chelyabinsk and on testing grounds near Moscow, a weapon was already being born that would transform their steel monsters into heaps of scrap metal and their arrogant confidence into mortal terror. The Soviet IS-2 heavy tank rewrote the rules of tank warfare by its mere appearance at the front. At distances where the German Tiger was considered invulnerable, the new Red Army tank's gun transformed even this heavily armored behemoth into twisted wreckage. 122 millimeters. That was the caliber Soviet engineers chose for the new D-25 gun. A shell weighing 25 kilograms carried kinetic energy capable of punching through 160 millimeters of homogeneous armor at a distance of 2 kilometers. This meant one thing. A Soviet tank could destroy a Tiger or Panther before the German tanker even saw his enemy's silhouette in the gun sight. The Wehrmacht's technical superiority crumbled before Soviet engineering genius. The contrast was striking. German designers bet on armor thickness and optical precision, creating heavy, slow machines that devoured fuel and demanded complex maintenance. Soviet engineers chose a different path: firepower and mobility. The IS-2, named after Joseph Stalin, weighed 46 tons versus the Tiger's 57. But its gun could penetrate what the German 88mm could not even scratch: speed, maneuverability, and killing power. The Soviet tank embodied a philosophy of war where victory goes not to the heaviest, but to whoever strikes first and strikes decisively. The story of the IS-2's creation is a tale of how Soviet industry and the Soviet design school transformed the technical backwardness of 1941 into overwhelming superiority by 1944. This is a narrative about factories evacuated beyond the Urals, about designers working 18-hour days, about metallurgists creating new grades of armor steel, and about tankmen who first tested the new weapon in combat. This is the story of how a single shot changed the balance of power on the Eastern Front and forced German command to completely revise all tactics of tank warfare. Autumn 1943 became the turning point. The Battle of Kursk demonstrated that the Red Army had learned to fight and learned to defeat German armored vehicles. But the price of these victories remained terribly high. The T-34 with its 76mm gun could knock out a Tiger only from the sides or rear, which required maneuvering and risk that inevitably led to losses. The KV-85 with its 85mm gun was a step forward, but insufficient. German tankers still felt like masters of the situation at long ranges, where their optics and armor penetration gave decisive advantage. Soviet command understood. What was needed was a tank that would not merely equal the Tiger, but surpass it. What was needed was a weapon that would make Germans fear every encounter with Soviet armor. What was needed was a gun whose single shot would decide the duel's outcome before the enemy could fire back. The task seemed impossible. German industry had been perfecting tank construction for decades, while Soviet industry was only beginning to catch up after the catastrophic losses of the war's first years. But Soviet designers had already proven they could create the impossible. The Chelyabinsk tractor plant, evacuated from Leningrad, became the center for developing the new heavy tank. The design bureau under Joseph Kotin worked on a chassis and hull capable of withstanding the recoil of the most powerful gun. Artillery Design Bureau No. 9 in Sverdlovsk developed the D-25 gun itself, a modification of the A-19 Core gun adapted for installation in a tank turret. Two teams, hundreds of engineers, thousands of workers, all labored toward one goal: to give the Red Army a weapon that would turn the tide of tank warfare. Technical requirements were unprecedented. A 122mm caliber gun created monstrous recoil. The recoil energy could destroy the tank's turret if the recoil mechanism was not calculated with absolute precision. A shell weighing 25 kilograms required separate loading, which reduced the rate of fire to 2 or 3 shots per minute versus the Tiger's 6 or 7. But Soviet designers understood the main thing. In a tank duel, victory goes not to whoever fires more often, but to whoever's first shot reaches its target. One accurate shot from an IS-2 was worth 3 shots from a Tiger, simply because after the first hit from a Soviet shell, there was nobody left to fire back. Winter 1943-44. The testing ground at Kubinka near Moscow. The IS-2 prototype with the D-25 gun prepared for firing tests against captured German equipment. Target: Tiger frontal armor, 100 millimeters of steel at an angle. Distance: 1,000 meters, 1 shot. The armor-piercing shell punched through the armor completely, tearing apart internal assemblies and transforming the fighting compartment into hell. A second shot from 2,000 meters. The same result. German armor, considered invulnerable, proved powerless against the Soviet shell. The Military Acceptance Commission recorded the results. The new gun could engage any German tank at distances where German guns were powerless against Soviet armor. The IS-2 received armor protection of 120 millimeters on the frontal section at rational angles of inclination. This was equivalent to 160 to 180 millimeters of vertical armor. This meant the Tiger's 88mm gun could penetrate the IS-2 only at close range, while the Soviet tank destroyed its enemy long before any approach. Dear friends, if this story of how Soviet engineers challenged German superiority has captivated you, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. What do you think about tank warfare on the Eastern Front? What stories from this period interest you most? Your support helps create new materials about great battles. The balance had shifted. The hunter became the prey. German reconnaissance reported the appearance of a new Soviet heavy tank, but reports were met with skepticism. German tankers, accustomed to their Tiger's superiority, did not believe the Russians capable of creating a machine surpassing theirs. Soviet mass media remained silent. The new tank remained a secret weapon until its mass appearance at the front. The first IS-2s rolled off the assembly line in late 1943. By January 1944, there were already several dozen. By spring, hundreds. The Red Army prepared to deliver a blow the German command had not foreseen. The IS-2 philosophy reflected the Soviet approach to war. Not to copy the enemy, but to surpass him. Not to create a heavy, unwieldy fortress, but to build a mobile destroyer of enemy tanks. Not to rely on armor thickness, but to stake everything on firepower. Soviet designers learned from 2 years of the most brutal fighting, rethought tank warfare tactics, and created a machine embodying all lessons from the Eastern Front. The IS became an answer not only to the Tiger, but to the entire German concept of heavy armored vehicles. That answer thundered across the battlefields of 1944 with the roar of 122 millimeters. Winter 1943 to 44. Chelyabinsk, a city transformed into one vast factory complex buried in the snows of the Urals. This was where the impossible would become reality. The design bureau under Joseph Yakovlevich Kotin worked under conditions that would break lesser men. 18-hour shifts in workshops where breath turned to frost, where the roar of machinery never ceased, where every calculation carried the weight of thousands of lives. Leading engineer Nikolai Fedorovich Shashmurin and his team faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable: installing a 122mm gun into a tank turret. The task was monumental. German industry had refined its craft over decades, perfecting every detail. Soviet industry was rebuilding from ashes, recovering from catastrophic losses of 41 and 42 when factories were evacuated eastward under relentless bombing. Equipment loaded onto railway flat cars, workers and engineers fleeing ahead of advancing Wehrmacht columns. Yet Soviet designers had already proven they possessed something the Germans lacked: the ability to create genius from desperation. Sverdlovsk, hundreds of kilometers to the east. Artillery Design Bureau No. 9 worked in parallel with Chelyabinsk. Chief designer Fedor Fedorovich Petrov understood what was needed: adapting the mighty A-19 Core gun for tank warfare. The base weapon was already proven: a 122mm field piece from 1931, modernized in 37. Now it had to be transformed, compressed, made to fit the confines of a revolving turret while maintaining its devastating power. The technical challenges seemed overwhelming. A 122mm caliber gun created monstrous recoil forces that could literally tear a tank turret from its mounting. Every millimeter of the recoil mechanism had to be calculated with absolute precision. One error, and the entire turret assembly would fail catastrophically during the first shot. The shell itself weighed 25 kilograms, requiring separate loading. First the projectile, then the propellant charge. This slowed the rate of fire dramatically to perhaps 2 or 3 rounds per minute compared to the Tiger's 6 or 7. But Petrov and his team grasped the fundamental truth that would define tank warfare's future. In a duel measured in seconds, victory belongs not to rapid fire, but to the devastating accuracy of that crucial first shot. Experience from developing the D2 anti-tank gun proved invaluable. Engineers had already solved the problem of mounting heavy artillery on mobile platforms. That knowledge now transferred to the tank program. The barrel design departed from the original A-19, incorporating lessons learned. A massive T-shaped muzzle brake was fitted to absorb recoil energy. The engineering was elegant in its brutality, channeling explosive forces sideways to reduce the backward thrust that would otherwise shatter the mounting. By mid-July 1943, the draft project bore signatures: Shashmurin on the 14th, Kotin on the 17th. The collaboration between Factory No. 9 and Factory No. 100 proceeded entirely on their own initiative, driven by urgent necessity rather than bureaucratic approval. The gun still lacked an official designation. That would come later when success made it undeniable. The calculations showed promise. This weapon could achieve what had seemed impossible. Winter testing grounds at Kubinka, 30 kilometers west of Moscow. December 1943. The prototype designated Object 240 stood ready. Its turret mounted the new gun, still unnamed but deadly. Before it sat a captured Tiger, 100 millimeters of frontal armor, the pride of German engineering. Marshal Kliment Voroshilov himself attended the trials. The first shot shattered the morning silence. The T-shaped muzzle brake disintegrated, fragments spinning away like shrapnel. The shock wave knocked snow from nearby trees. In the stunned silence that followed, officers approached cautiously. The muzzle brake had failed catastrophically. Military observers seized on this, arguing against such devices. They raised dust clouds that revealed firing positions. But the political will behind the project proved stronger than technical objections. Stalin himself intervened. The tank bearing his name would mount the most powerful gun in the world, regardless of conventional wisdom. Engineers redesigned the muzzle brake, studying German two-chamber designs before creating their own superior version. By March of '44, the Soviet design from TSAKB replaced the failed prototype. The trials continued with the improved brake. Distance, 1,000 meters. Target, Tiger frontal armor. The armor-piercing shells struck with the force of a thunderbolt. Metal screamed as 100 millimeters of German steel plate yielded, the projectile punching completely through. Inside the abandoned tank, the shell's passage created havoc. Transmission shattered, internal fittings torn loose. The fighting compartment transformed into a death trap. A second shot from 2,000 meters produced identical results. The Military Acceptance Commission documented every detail. This weapon could engage German heavy tanks at ranges where enemy guns remained ineffective. The Tiger's vaunted 88mm KWK-36 could not threaten Soviet armor at such distances. The balance of power had shifted fundamentally. The gun received its official designation, D-25T. The D came from division, reflecting its core artillery heritage. 25 denoted the caliber in centimeters, and T marked it as a tank weapon. The ballistics were devastating. Muzzle velocity of 781 meters per second, muzzle energy of 820 ton-meters. For comparison, the Tiger's gun generated only 368 ton-meters. The Royal Tiger's longer 88mm achieved 520. Nothing in the German arsenal approached Soviet firepower. But firepower alone could not guarantee victory. The IS-2 needed armor to match its gun. Engineers designed the frontal protection at 120 millimeters thick, angled at optimal slopes. The geometry transformed effective thickness to between 160 and 180 millimeters when measured perpendicular to the plate surface. German armor-piercing shells would strike at angles, their penetrating power dramatically reduced. The Tiger's gun could threaten the IS-2 only at dangerously close ranges, where Soviet return fire would be instantly lethal. The philosophy driving IS-2 development rejected German thinking entirely. Where German engineers prioritized armor thickness, Soviet designers emphasized firepower. Where Germans built ponderous fortresses, Soviets created swift destroyers. The IS-2 weighed 46 tons against the Tiger's 57, yet mounted a far more powerful weapon. This represented more than engineering choice. It embodied a fundamental shift in understanding mechanized warfare. 31st October, 1943. Stalin signed State Defense Committee Resolution number 4479 SS. The IS-2 entered official service. Factory number 9 received orders to complete the tank variant of the A-19 gun by 11th November with piston breech, presenting it for firing trials by 27th November. Simultaneously, they would develop a wedge breech mechanism for production beginning in '44. The deadline pressure reflected desperate urgency. German Tigers and Panthers multiplied on the Eastern Front. Every week of delay meant more Soviet tanks destroyed, more crews burned alive. December brought the first production models from Chelyabinsk assembly lines. Initially equipped with piston breech mechanisms, these tanks served as interim solutions while engineers perfected the wedge breech design. By January '44, improved models rolled out featuring the semi-automatic wedge breech that marginally increased firing rate. Production accelerated rapidly. Dozens in winter, hundreds by spring. The Red Army prepared its response to German armor superiority. German reconnaissance detected reports of new Soviet heavy tanks, but dismissed them skeptically. After years of technical dominance, Wehrmacht tankers could not conceive that Russian engineers might surpass German achievements. This fatal arrogance would cost them dearly in coming battles when IS-2 tanks emerged from morning mist with their 122mm guns ready to rewrite the rules of armored warfare. February 1944, right bank Ukraine lay beneath winter's grip. Snow-covered fields transformed into killing grounds. The Korsun-Shevchenkovsky operation unfolded across this frozen landscape. And into this maelstrom came the first IS-2 heavy tanks, their crews eager yet uncertain. These were the 71st Guards Heavy Tank Regiment and others newly formed, equipped with machines whose reputation existed only in hushed conversations among designers and testing officers. German tankers had no idea what approached through the blizzard. The snow-covered plains concealed new silhouettes, tanks bearing unusually long gun barrels that would soon redefine armored warfare's brutal calculus. When German Panther crews first spotted IS-2s through their gun sights at 1,500 meters, they saw unfamiliar shapes. The distinctively long barrel of the 122mm D-25T protruded far beyond the hull, making identification uncertain. Were these modified KVs? New Soviet designs? Before questions could be answered, the D-25 spoke. The first combat shots from the IS-2 shattered German confidence as completely as they shattered German armor. Armor-piercing shells weighing 25 kilograms struck Panthers at ranges where German crews believed themselves safe. The effect was catastrophic. Frontal plates penetrated cleanly, internal components destroyed, crews killed before understanding what had killed them. At 1,800 meters, distances where Panthers could barely threaten Soviet medium tanks, the IS-2 delivered instant death. The psychological impact exceeded even the physical destruction. German tankers radioed frantic reports. New Soviet heavy tank, massive gun, invulnerable at range. Wehrmacht tank commanders, who had spent years developing tactics based on technical superiority, suddenly confronted obsolescence. Their carefully refined doctrine of engaging at maximum distance, using superior optics and gun performance, collapsed when Soviet tanks could kill at ranges exceeding German capabilities. The mathematics of survival had reversed overnight. Where German crews once calculated angles and distances with confidence, they now faced simple terror. The Lvov-Sandomierz operation in July 44 demonstrated the IS-2's devastating effectiveness when properly employed. The 29th Guards Heavy Tank Regiment under Lieutenant Colonel Tezikov became legendary during these battles. Operating near Lvov, the regiment faced concentrated German armor. Tiger battalions, Panther companies, the cream of Wehrmacht panzer forces desperately attempting to halt Soviet advances. Between 16th and 19th July, regimental records documented 23 confirmed kills of German heavy tanks. The tactics were brutally simple. IS-2s positioned in ambush, waiting for German armor to approach within killing range of the D-25, while remaining beyond effective German gun range. 2 IS-2s in carefully chosen positions destroyed 17 German tanks and self-propelled guns over 2 days. The regiment's final tally for the entire operation told the new story of Eastern Front armor warfare. 38 German tanks and assault guns destroyed against losses of 4 IS-2s, burned beyond recovery, and 5 damaged but repairable. These numbers represented revolutionary change. The ratio had inverted from desperate Soviet disadvantage to comfortable superiority. German commanders began issuing new orders that acknowledged bitter reality. Tank battalions received explicit instructions: avoid direct engagement with IS-2 tanks, seek flanking opportunities, attack only from concealment, never expose your position at long range. The hunter had become hunted, and German tankers who months earlier had dominated battlefield encounters now moved with fear. Soviet crews, meanwhile, developed confidence born of technical advantage. The 122mm gun's power extended beyond armor penetration. High explosive shells weighing 25 kilograms carried destructive force comparable to medium artillery. Even when failing to penetrate armor, these shells inflicted terrible damage. Vision blocks shattered, external equipment destroyed, crews concussed by overpressure that turned tank interiors into torture chambers. Cases emerged where high explosive impacts literally tore turrets from Panthers through sheer explosive force, the blast wave finding weaknesses in turret ring joints and exploiting them catastrophically. German crews who survived such encounters emerged deaf, bleeding from ears and noses, psychologically shattered. By autumn 1944, IS-2 production reached 150 tanks monthly from Chelyabinsk's assembly lines. New Guards heavy tank regiments formed continuously, each receiving 21 IS-2s plus several T-34s for reconnaissance. These regiments deployed as breakthrough forces, assigned to armies conducting major offensives. Their tactical employment reflected Soviet combined arms doctrine refined through years of brutal learning. IS-2s advanced in first echelons, suppressing anti-tank guns with high explosive fire while destroying enemy armor with armor-piercing rounds. Behind them came medium tank brigades exploiting breakthroughs, followed by mechanized infantry. The concentration of firepower on decisive axes became possible only through mass production of heavy tanks mounting guns superior to anything the enemy fielded. German industry could not respond effectively. Monthly Tiger production peaked at 40 tanks, Panther at 150, while Soviet factories delivered over 1,000 T-34s plus those 150 IS-2s. The industrial war was lost before tanks ever met in combat. Chelyabinsk emerged as Tankograd, the city that became synonymous with Soviet industrial might. By autumn 1944, assembly lines produced 150 IS-2 tanks monthly, a torrent of steel that German industry could never match. The Kirov plant, evacuated from besieged Leningrad in '41, had transformed from refugee workshop into the engine of Soviet armored superiority. Between 1943 and '45, 3,473 IS-2s rolled from these production halls. Each tank represented 18-hour shifts, workers sleeping beside their machines, engineers solving problems in real time as components moved down assembly lines. The factories beyond the Urals operated beyond reach of Luftwaffe bombers, supplied continuously with raw materials from Siberian mines and Central Asian refineries. This geographic advantage proved decisive. While German plants burned under Allied bombing raids, Soviet production accelerated. German tank industry faced catastrophic collapse. Tiger production peaked at 104 tanks monthly in April '44 before declining sharply. Total Tiger I production reached only 1,347 vehicles before ceasing entirely in August '44. The Royal Tiger replacement managed merely 492 units before war's end. Panther production, though more substantial at 6,000 total, peaked at 380 monthly in July '44. These numbers told the story of industrial defeat before battles were fought. Monthly Soviet production exceeded 1,000 T-34s, plus those 150 IS-2s. German factories delivered perhaps 150 Panthers and 30 to 40 Tigers combined. The arithmetic of attrition favored the Soviet Union overwhelmingly. For every German heavy tank produced, Soviet industry delivered 4 IS-2s and 7 T-34s. This disparity widened month by month as Allied strategic bombing systematically destroyed German manufacturing capacity. The cost differential revealed deeper problems. A Tiger I required 250,000 Reichsmarks to produce, consuming 300,000 man-hours of skilled labor. The Panther cost 117,000 Reichsmarks. By contrast, an IS-2 cost significantly less through standardized production methods and component commonality with other Soviet designs. More critically, Soviet tanks emphasized field repairability. Crews could replace damaged components using basic tools and salvage parts. German tanks required specialized equipment and trained technicians. When Panthers or Tigers broke down in combat zones, crews often abandoned repairable machines because recovery proved impossible. Soviet tankers cannibalized damaged vehicles, swapped engines, welded patches, and returned tanks to combat within days. This practical approach multiplied effective numbers far beyond production statistics. Allied bombing compounded German difficulties catastrophically. Night raids on 27 to 28 April 44 destroyed the Maybach engine plant, halting Panther and Tiger production for 5 months. Attacks on assembly facilities followed. Daimler-Benz on 6th August, MAN on 10th September, 3rd October, 19th October, then again on 3rd January and 20th February 45. Each raid set production back weeks while simultaneously destroying irreplaceable machine tools and killing skilled workers. Spare parts production collapsed entirely. As percentage of total output, spares dropped from 25 to 30% in 43 to merely 8% by late 44. Panthers in the field required cannibalization of other Panthers for repairs. Tigers sat immobilized, awaiting components that would never arrive. The vicious cycle accelerated. Fewer operational tanks meant higher losses among those remaining, which meant more tanks needed repair, which meant fewer spare parts available per tank. German armored formations reported operational readiness rates plummeting below 40%. Meanwhile, Soviet tank brigades maintained 60 to 70% readiness through simple, robust design and abundant spare parts. The Royal Tiger exemplified German engineering's fatal disconnect from wartime reality. This 69-ton behemoth mounted the fearsome 88mm KWK 43L71 gun and carried 150 millimeters of sloped frontal armor. On paper, specifications were magnificent. In practice, the 700 horsepower engine inherited from the Panther proved grossly inadequate for nearly 70 tons. Transmissions failed constantly. Final drives broke under stress. Tracks wore out rapidly. Yet German engineers persisted with this approach, building what they considered the ultimate tank while ignoring logistics, maintenance, and mass production requirements. Soviet testing of captured Royal Tigers at Kubinka in November 44 revealed telling results. The D-25T penetrated frontal armor at 1,500 meters when striking vertical sections or plate joints. At 600 meters, shots penetrated even the heavily sloped upper glacis through seam weaknesses. The Royal Tiger's own Kk-43 failed to penetrate the same armor from 400 meters. The Panther's 75mm managed penetration only at 100 meters. Soviet shells, though fired at lower velocity, carried such tremendous mass and energy that they overcame German metallurgical advantages through sheer kinetic force. Moreover, Royal Tiger production numbers made strategic impact impossible. Fewer than 500 built versus thousands of IS-2s meant individual superiority became statistically irrelevant. The industrial war reached its inevitable conclusion by early 45. Vistula Oder operation saw IS-2s spearheading breakthrough after breakthrough. East Prussian operation witnessed IS-2s reducing Königsberg's fortifications. The path to Berlin lay open, and German industry could neither replace losses nor produce sufficient numbers to contest Soviet advances. The 122mm gun had won not through individual superiority alone, but through combination of battlefield effectiveness and industrial mass production that German planners never matched. 16th April, 1945. Dawn broke over the Oder River Valley with apocalyptic fury. E-2nd 9,000 artillery pieces and Katyusha rocket launchers opened fire simultaneously at 3 o'clock Moscow time, transforming darkness into hellfire. The Seelow Heights, last major defensive barrier before Berlin, disappeared beneath curtains of explosive flame. Heavy tank regiments positioned their IS-2s in forward assault groups, 122mm guns ready to suppress German strongpoints. The Oder's floodplain had been deliberately flooded by German engineers, creating swampland that channeled Soviet armor onto predictable approach routes. German defenders waited in echelon defensive lines stretching back 15 kilometers toward Berlin. Anti-tank ditches concealed 88mm guns, dug in Panthers and Tigers, Panzerfaust teams in every building and tree line. General Gotthard Heinrici had prepared masterfully, thinning forces elsewhere to concentrate maximum firepower on this predictable axis. When Soviet infantry surged forward following the barrage, they encountered resistance fiercer than anticipated. Marshal Zhukov had underestimated both terrain difficulty and defensive preparation. The 140 searchlights intended to blind defenders instead created confusion among Soviet troops advancing through smoke and fog. IS-2s committed prematurely to breakthrough attempts found terrain steeper than reconnaissance suggested. Slopes that appeared manageable on maps proved nearly vertical in reality, forcing tank commanders to seek narrow defiles where German anti-tank guns waited in ambush. The first day's fighting cost hundreds of Soviet tanks, many IS-2s among them, as German gunners exploited every tactical advantage. Panzerfausts struck from close range, hitting side and rear armor where IS-2 protection proved inadequate. Yet sheer weight of numbers and relentless pressure gradually overwhelmed defenders. By 18th April, breakthrough became inevitable. Soviet tanks reached Highway 1 beyond Seelow, pushing toward Diedersdorf. The IS-2's 122mm gun proved devastating against German fortifications, even when long-range advantage disappeared in close terrain. High explosive shells weighing 25 kilograms demolished concrete bunkers with 2 or 3 direct hits, collapsing structures designed to withstand conventional artillery. 24th April marked the beginning of Berlin's encirclement. Soviet heavy tank regiments reached the city's outskirts from multiple directions. The urban battlefield transformed tactical considerations entirely. Narrow streets between rubble-choked buildings negated range advantages. German defenders positioned Panzerfaust teams at intersections, in upper-story windows, behind hastily erected barricades. Every block became a fortress. Every basement sheltered machine gun nests. IS-2s adapted their role from long-range tank destroyers to mobile siege artillery, advancing with infantry in coordinated assault groups. The D-25T demonstrated new utility. Firing point-blank into buildings, the massive shells punched through walls, detonated inside, and killed defenders 3 rooms deep. Brick buildings converted to strong points collapsed after 1 or 2 impacts. Concrete structures required sustained bombardment, but eventually succumbed. The IS-2 worked as mechanized battering ram, smashing paths for following infantry through Berlin's fortified districts. Faust Patron teams remained deadly threat throughout urban combat. Single determined soldier with disposable anti-tank weapon could disable IS-2 from ambush range under 10 meters. Side and rear armor, though substantial, could not withstand shaped charge warheads at perpendicular impact angles. Soviet crews learned bitter lessons in street fighting. Never advance alone, always maintain infantry screens. Watch every window and basement entrance. Never stop moving in exposed positions. Frontal armor proved remarkably effective, even against Panzerfausts. The sloped 120mm plates deflected or absorbed multiple hits that would have destroyed lighter tanks. This durability allowed IS-2s to operate in environments where lighter armor feared to venture. 29th April brought the assault on the Reichstag, symbol of Nazi power, heavily fortified and defended by SS troops determined to die rather than surrender. IS-2s positioned themselves as close support weapons, firing into windows and embrasures at ranges measured in tens of meters rather than thousands. The combination of armor protection, crew training, and overwhelming firepower made them ideal for this brutal work where technical finesse mattered less than raw destructive capability. 30th April, 14 hours, 25 minutes. Assault detachments stormed the Reichstag after sustained bombardment. IS-2s stood nearby, gun barrels still smoking from sustained fire. Their role in this moment was both practical and symbolic. The 122mm guns that had destroyed Tigers at Korosun now reduced Hitler's parliament to rubble. Red banner rose over Berlin's symbolic heart, while IS-2 crews watched, exhausted, victorious. 2nd May brought Berlin garrison's capitulation. General Helmut Weidling, commanding city defenses, surrendered to Soviet forces. The war in Europe effectively ended. IS-2s had traveled from snow-covered Ukrainian fields in February 44 to Berlin's devastated streets in May 45. 15 months of continuous combat proved the D-25T's versatility beyond original specifications. Designed primarily for long-range anti-tank warfare, the weapon excelled equally in urban assault, fortification reduction, and close-quarters combat. Statistics documented revolutionary success. Approximately 1,000 IS-2s lost during entire war against roughly 4,000 German heavy tanks and assault guns destroyed. The ratio favored Soviet arms decisively. Production totaled 3,473 IS-2s versus German output of 1,347 Tiger Is, 492 Royal Tigers, and 6,000 Panthers. Numbers told only part of the story. Technical superiority mattered less than industrial capacity, battlefield effectiveness, crew training, and tactical employment. The IS-2 succeeded because it combined devastating firepower with adequate protection and sufficient mobility, mass-produced by industry capable of sustaining losses, operated by increasingly experienced crews employed in doctrine emphasizing concentration of force on decisive axes. The 122mm gun represented culmination of Soviet tank development from desperate improvisation in 41 through confident mastery in 45. Berlin's fall vindicated every engineering decision, every production sacrifice, every crew's courage. The path from Chelyabinsk's design bureaus to the Reichstag's ruins proved Soviet arms could match and surpass the best German engineering through combination of technical innovation and industrial determination. May 1945. Columns of Soviet armor lined Berlin's devastated streets. Among countless T-34s rose the massive silhouettes of IS-2 heavy tanks. Their long D-25T gun barrels pointed skyward in silent salute to victory. War in Europe had ended. Soviet weapons triumphed. Behind this moment lay statistics that documented revolutionary transformation. 3,473 IS-2s produced between 43 and 45. Combat losses approximately 1,000 machines. Exchange ratio against destroyed enemy armor approached 4-to-1 in Soviet favor. German industry managed only 1,347 Tiger Is, 492 Royal Tigers, 6,000 Panthers total. Practically all this equipment destroyed by war's end. Industrial superiority proved as decisive as battlefield courage. The 122mm gun symbolized this triumph. Conceived in desperate necessity, engineered under impossible conditions, manufactured in evacuated factories, deployed with devastating effect across 3,000 kilometers from Ukraine to Germany's heart. Post-war service extended IS-2 operational life far beyond original expectations. The D-25T remained standard armament through the 1950s. Modernization program beginning '57 produced IS-2M variant, incorporating lessons from later heavy tank development. Improvements included upgraded engine, V54KIS, with enhanced cooling and starting systems extending operational range from 340 to 490 kilometers with auxiliary fuel drums. New transmission with oil cooling system addressed chronic reliability issues. Improved air filtration extended maintenance intervals from 50 to 400 kilometers in dusty conditions. Enhanced vision devices replaced older periscopes. Commanders received TPK-1 panoramic sights. Drivers got improved observation blocks, reducing blind spots from 12 meters to 5. Night vision equipment became standard. TVN-2 and BVN devices, enabling nocturnal operations. Ammunition capacity increased. Rear turret machine gun removed, replaced by ventilation fan, improving crew comfort during sustained firing. External stowage boxes did along hull sides. T-10 tanks, tracks, and road wheels retrofitted for improved mobility and reduced maintenance. These modernized IS-2Ms served until 1982 in Soviet reserve formations, finally withdrawn from all service only in '95, 50 years after initial design. Export to Allied nations extended the type's operational geography dramatically. China received 60 IS-2s in 50 to 51, attempting reverse engineering as Type 122 medium tank before abandoning the project due to complexity. Chinese tanks deployed along Sino-Soviet border in concrete emplacements during later tensions. North Korea obtained IS-2 regiments before Korean War, but never committed them to combat, perhaps recognizing unsuitable terrain or fearing losses of irreplaceable equipment. Cuba acquired 41 IS-2Ms in 1960. Operating them for decades despite American embargo making spare parts procurement difficult. Poland operated 70 IS-2s that fought in Pomerania and Berlin campaigns, maintaining service through '60s. Czechoslovakia's 8 tanks served until '60. East Germany received 60 in '56, operating until '63. Each nation recognized the D-25T's continued relevance even as tank doctrine evolved toward main battle tank concept, combining medium mobility with heavy firepower. The IS-2's engineering legacy profoundly influenced subsequent Soviet armor development. Experience gained creating powerful tank-mounted artillery directly informed next-generation designs. IS-3, developed late '44 and entering service '45, incorporated improved armor geometry, while retaining D-25T armament proven supremely effective. T-10 heavy tank, final evolution of IS series, continued 122mm gun tradition through early '60s. More significantly, Soviet design philosophy crystallized around principles IS-2 exemplified. Prioritize firepower over armor thickness, emphasize mobility alongside protection, design for mass production and field maintenance. Integrate lessons continuously through rapid iteration. These principles guided T-54 and T-55 medium tank development, arguably most successful tank designs in history with over 70,000 produced. The 122mm D-25 influenced subsequent gun development directly. D-10T, 100mm for T-54-55 traced design lineage. as did later smoothbore guns, emphasizing kinetic energy penetration. Artillery Design Bureau No. 9, creator of D-25T, continued developing tank armament throughout Cold War, maintaining Soviet artillery superiority across decades. Chief designer Fedor Fedorovich Petrov's work establishing baseline for generations of successors. Joseph Yakovlevich Kotin, leading heavy tank development from KV through IS series to T-10, became legendary figure in Soviet armor circles. Nikolai Fedorovich Shashmurin, IS-2's lead engineer, contributed fundamentally to shape Soviet heavy tank evolution. Their achievement under wartime conditions remains remarkable. From concept to combat deployment in under 12 months, accomplishing what peacetime development typically required years to achieve. Factory workers at Chelyabinsk, overwhelmingly women after military mobilization took men, worked 18-hour shifts in unheated workshops throughout winter. Metallurgists developed new armor alloys under resource constraints. Production engineers devised manufacturing shortcuts, maintaining quality while accelerating output. Every tank represented collective sacrifice, determination, skill. Crew training emphasized IS-2's unique characteristics. 2 officers per crew, commander and senior mechanic driver, reflected vehicle's complexity and value. Remaining crew consisted of gunner and loader, both sergeants. The loader simultaneously trained as junior mechanic driver for redundancy. This organizational structure acknowledged that IS-2 deployment demanded higher expertise than medium tanks. Gunnery training focused on long-range precision. Engaging targets at 1,500 to 2,000 meters required understanding ballistics, range estimation, lead calculation for moving targets. Commanders learned combined arms coordination. IS-2 regiments operated with infantry, artillery, engineers in breakthrough operations. Tactical doctrine evolved continuously based on combat experience. Early war emphasis on individual tank duels gave way to coordinated regimental actions, concentrating firepower on narrow sectors. Urban warfare lessons from Berlin informed post-war doctrine regarding assault gun role. IS-2s proved invaluable, reducing fortifications, suppressing strongpoints, providing mobile artillery support where maneuver space disappeared. Memory of IS-2 creators lives in every narrative of great patriotic war. Kotin never received Hero of Soviet Union decoration, despite his tank's decisive contributions. Neither did Petrov, Shashmurin, or countless engineers and workers whose names history largely forgot. Yet their achievement transcends individual recognition. They created legend embodied in steel, the tank that broke Wehrmacht's armored might, that forced German tankers to abandon open battle for desperate ambush, that smashed through Berlin's final defenses. Each vehicle carried fragment of their genius, dedication, belief in victory. Modern Russians encounter IS-2 in museums, memorials, monuments throughout former Soviet territory. Tank monuments stand in dozens of cities: Moscow, St. Petersburg, Chelyabinsk, countless others. These silent sentinels remind new generations of sacrifice required to defeat fascism. Victory Museum in Moscow displays IS-2 alongside other weapons that secured Soviet triumph. Kubinka Tank Museum maintains operational examples. International collections in Europe, America, China preserve specimens. The 122mm caliber became synonymous with Soviet heavy armor supremacy. Those 3 digits represented more than technical specification. They symbolized industrial mobilization, engineering excellence, tactical innovation, strategic vision. From first shot at Korsun through final bombardment at Reichstag, D-25T wrote history in explosive punctuation. It proved fundamental truth. Victory belongs not to thickest armor, but to weapons striking first, striking farthest, striking hardest. German engineers prioritized individual tank quality, creating masterpieces requiring enormous resources and skilled maintenance. Soviet designers emphasized battlefield effectiveness and industrial producibility, creating weapons that could be built by thousands, operated by adequately trained crews, maintained in field conditions, replaced when lost. This philosophical difference decided armored warfare's outcome. Statistics confirmed judgment. Tigers burned from Kursk to Königsberg. Panthers abandoned for lack of fuel and spare parts. Royal Tigers immobilized by mechanical failure. IS-2s rolled onward, supplied, repaired, reinforced, until Berlin fell and swastika flags came down forever. Technical specification sheets never capture this reality. Numbers describe performance. History records results. The D-25T delivered both. Thank you to those who watched until the end. You are the best audience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave comments. This is very important. Thank you for your support in creating new materials about great battles and heroes. Remember history. It is our memory and our strength. Until we meet again, friends.